So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I'd also like to acknowledge that Ms. Franklin is joining via phone conference call, and as such, all voting will be by a roll call. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance and the silence. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For next standing, please, I'd like to take a moment to, as the board would like to express our appreciation to all of our community partners, first responders, utility repair crews, county, state, and federal agencies that have come together tirelessly to provide aid during this time. The board would also like to extend our heartfelt gratitude and pride. And I want to say that again, pride, to the staff of Buncombe County Schools who have worked around the clock to prepare our students to safely reopen. We are grateful to all who have given so much to our Western North Carolina communities in helping with relief efforts. In this moment of silence, we want to recognize the significant losses incurred by the community throughout Western North Carolina. Our students, family, staff, and neighbors have been impacted tremendously. I would also like for us to remember these days of coming together regardless of differences, and keep in our hearts and minds that we carry that forward. Thank you. You may be seated. May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
That's Glenda. May I have a second?
Second.
Now we're going to do a roll call vote. Ms. Ann Franklin? Here. Rod Elliott?
Aye.
Linda Weiner?
Aye.
Judy Lewis? Amy Churchill? Aye. Peggy Buchanan? And Kim Clemens?
Aye.
Motion carries. At this time, I would like to introduce Dr. Jackson for the presentation.
Good morning, board members, those present, members of our community. It strikes me that we met just 1 week ago, and as you'll hear this morning, significant progress has been made across our community, across Buncombe County, and throughout our school system. Progress that brings me great pride, great gratitude, and great appreciation for all those who've made that possible, because we're in a very different place 7 days later than we were a week ago, so we're certainly very appreciative of that. We continue to see throughout our school system, as we support our community in many ways we haven't and are supporting our community, the truth of our theme this year, Together We Rise. We've seen our school system working with our charter school colleagues across Buncombe County, with the city school system, with our Buncombe County government, with law enforcement, emergency responders, with businesses, with those who travel here from out of state to support Buncombe County, and with our faith-based partners. We've seen together become all-encompassing, as it always should, and we're very appreciative of that. This morning, as we begin, I want to share that we're very proud that we've been able to account for all to serve us as well. And so at this time, I'd like to share with you our work through our departments to prepare for reopening our schools. As we've stated all along, our goal since the hurricane arrived was to reopen our schools as soon as we possibly could, to reopen our schools safely for our staff members, to reopen our schools safely for our students, and we have stood on as soon as we possibly could. To make that happen has required almost miraculous work. It's required late nights. In the middle of the night, I've been with some of our maintenance folks as we've been doing what we need to do. With our leadership teams, we've been doing what we need to do. Because getting our students back in our classrooms is absolutely worthy of our every effort, because our children are worthy of our every effort. So we'd like to share with you how we've been working to make that possible in what seems like maybe, I won't say impossible because we're educators. I don't think we know what that word means. But what was certainly very difficult possible. And so we'd like to start with Mr. Jeremy Stowe, who's our Director of Transportation. Mr. Stowe?
Thank you, Dr. Jackson, members of the board. Excited to be here because the fact we're standing here means it's time to get our students back in school. So we, as a transportation department, realize how heavy of a task this is and what we have ahead of us. When we started to work in this capacity of thinking, all right, we're moving from recovery to reopening, we knew that we had to gather information as far as what's available and what can we do. There are a lot of information on roads right now, and it changes constantly. First place we started was our obvious friends at the Department of Transportation. They've got a great website. If you've not used that before this, I would encourage you to do it, drivenc.gov, and you can filter it down to Buncombe County. And specifically right now, you can look at roads that are impacted through Hurricane Helene. Yesterday at 5:30, I did that filter. We have 39 roads listed that are marked as impassable or closed by DOT standards. We keep going from that list. That list has been as high as 80 to 90 there at the very beginning. We've had in the communities, the folks that know what's going on at the ground level, we've had a lot of conversations as a department with local fire department, often some National Guard respondents that are in the area that have been working with some different families to Chardon, I found this road. The road in the picture is it's Hobson Branch and Bartlett Road. It is not listed on Drive NC as a closed road, but I do believe it meets our standards of being closed. And Mr. Chardon and I were out running routes the other day. The days kind of blur together, maybe Tuesday afternoon. And I said, we can go down Hobson Branch. We can connect over to Ivy Hill. I don't think we'll be able to use that road. So we've continued to compile this list of roads. But though this road is not listed on that DOT site that I listed earlier, we're going out and visually inspecting every road for safety. One of the items that we've really found as we've done these visual inspections is that the shoulders and the variables along the roads have changed. As I've grown in this job over the last 3 years, I've worked with national consultants and different groups that route buses, and they all say the same thing when they look at our maps. They say, do you have any straight roads? And do you have any that do not go up hills or down hills? I say, no, we don't have. We've got 3. And with those, we have narrow shoulders. And what we found during this storm is those narrow shoulders continue to be washed and became narrower, if that's correct to say. And as we sat as a department and thought, how will we define if a road is safe for us to travel? We came up with this rule, and I printed this in the slide. And basically it says that we will open a road for a route if a bus can drive in its assigned lane without deviating from that lane into oncoming traffic. And this picture was taken yesterday at around 5 o'clock when I left this office, headed back to my office. And that's, if you know where Silverline Plastic is, and you make that right going up Old Burnsville Highway to Elkwood Avenue, this is the road that is it's open, right? It meets all the items, but I cannot safely route a bus on that road because it pushes us well into the oncoming traffic, and there's nothing safe about that as we develop these routes. So these roads we know exist all over our county and each one of our communities. So right now, as we gather this information, we're making a list that says it's open today and closed tomorrow, right? Because we know these variables change. The top picture here, it's a little bit more cleared out and it's a little safer, but notice those logs, they're hanging out over the shoulder. And we're really taking time to be sure that we travel this with the bus drivers so that we can see what can we drive and what can we not drive. Now, as we build those routes, we want to try to make every opportunity to build these routes as close to pre-Helene as possible. And when we route a bus, the visual representation that I often use is we look at the school as the hub of a wheel, right? And from that hub of the wheel, we have spokes. And we know those spokes and everybody in our community of where we go out to. Right now, previous to Helene, our spokes went to the far outreaches of our communities. And we'll still do that as much as we safely can. However, a number of our spokes won't be as long as they have been over years and will be considerably smaller and considerably shorter. So we'll try to make these routes as close to pre-Helene areas as we could. One of the concentrations that I've really pushed the schools with is being sure that we use in our communities the same bus drivers and the same buses, right? We want to keep as close to normal and as close to what we know as possible. We're still building some of those routes, and it changes often. When we can't go down certain roads, I'm looking at Mr. Elliott over there in Old Fort Road. You don't get to go far up Old Fort Road. And as you go up Old Fort Road, we know that we're going to have to take all the students that are on Old Fort Road and bring them on out towards 74 to a community stop. We're right now securing permissions from different churches, businesses, etc., to where we can have a community stop where we can communicate with the families that are on Old Fort Road and how they can get closer to 74 so that we can pick them up and assign a time. Also, as we build these routes, the goal, and I say the goal right now as we're still working through the fine details, is if we're having a community stop for an elementary school and a middle school and a high school, we want to try to build these community stops to where they're convenient for the families, where maybe a high school stop is at 7 o'clock, the elementary stop is at 7:10, and 7:15 for the middle school stop, whatever the case is. Trying to keep those variables in mind that the families are going through hardships, and we need to try to be as convenient as we can be to get the students from home to school and school to home in a safe fashion. And then finally, we will communicate those routes specifically with the schools to the families that are impacted. A lot of different ideas are floating around right now, but basically trying to look for a master list of community stops in that area so that families can find the community stop that's for them or maybe one that would be convenient for them in their work schedule, etc. All right, when the buses roll, the first thing that I want to make mention of on this is it'll be like the first day of school all over again. I can tell you that anybody that's been administrator in a school or had my job, that is a very stressful first week, right? Because you just pray that everybody gets home and to school in a very safe fashion. So I really ask the community that we have patience as we work through those first day of school jitters. Also, I always like the 10-minute rule. And if we give you a time of 7 o'clock, give us 10 minutes before, and don't be upset if we're not there until 10 minutes after. We'll try to hit it. And just like any bus stop, as we all work together over the years with these items, we start dialing that in as we get closer and closer to what this new normal will look like. And then I do want to push our folks to still use our parent app. Now, there will be one thing that will be wrong, and I want to go ahead and say this, is if your assignment, if your stop is not going to be at your front door where it's typically assigned, and it gives you a time, and we moved you a community stop, right, you'll still be able to watch where the bus is in real time, but your times will still be, it'll still be trying to route you back to your house. So the families will be able to watch in real time the little bus on the road there of where they are with respect to where you're sitting. So it'll be real time updates. And that'll be a good feature as we look to these community stops. So the goal at the end of all this, as we look on how we get our students from home to school and school to home in a very safe and reliable fashion, is we will concentrate on safety for all students at all times. When I wrote this next one, it said these routes will change constantly as road conditions. My first time I wrote it, I put improve. But then I had to strike that because it's not necessarily improved, they will change. We see a lot of these where debris may not be in the road on Monday, but on Tuesday or Wednesday, we find that there's a large pile of debris and we're having to reroute again. So I had to change that word consciously from improved to change. But we will work with families as fast as we have that information. We will give that information in a very individualized fashion to the school. Bus drivers previous to the first day of school will drive their routes in their buses to see that they can find all the turnarounds. When we get the go-ahead of teacher work days or days previous to the start of school, we will drive our routes in our buses to be sure we can do that in a safe and reliable fashion. And again, everything's going to be built around safety. We're going to go slow. We are school buses. We are slow, but we will do it in a safe and orderly fashion to get everybody to and from school. So next is my friend Clark White, our Director of Facilities and Maintenance.
Good morning. First, I want to take a moment to recognize our maintenance and facilities teams for working around the clock, using their amazing talents and dedication to get our school system back in order. We just thinking some of the things we've done, kind of like what we do in the summertime, rebuilding, replacing items through our capital outlay process that we take somewhere near 2 months. We've done that amount of work in 2 weeks. So I want a huge shout out to our team. They're amazing, and I appreciate each one of them. I also want to thank our local agencies, our permit office, our fire marshal office, Duke Energy, our state and local agencies that have worked with us diligently to expedite the processes of getting our buildings back in order. Wrong direction. All right. So I'm just going to give you a overall update of our facilities. As many of you know, each of our 45 campuses received some form of damage. It could be simply as a tree falling at one of our schools to some major damage inside the building. 7 of our campuses received extensive damage inside, and that was water damage, whether it was from major roof leaks to some form of flooding coming into our buildings. We are working with multiple contractors and our staff to rebuild all of those 7 campuses that received damage inside. Here's a list of the schools, the 7 schools that received the most extensive damage: Barnardsville Elementary, Black Mountain Elementary, Black Mountain Primary, Owen High, Owen Middle, W.D. Williams, and Community High. At each of these schools, we are monitoring for indoor air quality along our rebuilding process, and we'll continue to monitor that until we make sure each building is safe to re-enter. Some of our buildings received some major equipment damage. Cane Creek Middle, our wastewater treatment plant, Fairview Elementary wastewater treatment plant received basically both plants were totally destroyed. We are in the process of rebuilding those. We have a plan in place to pump and haul our waste until we can get those rebuilt, but that may take several more weeks to get those back to fully operational status. Our aquatic center received some damage on the main pumps and the controls for the pump. So we're working with contractors to get our aquatic center back operational as soon as possible. We continue to monitor each facility for water availability. Currently, we have water at each one of our schools. Our schools located in the North Buncombe district are served by Weaverville Water, and as of a couple days ago, those school buildings have been dropped from the boil water advisory, so they are able to use their water as normal. Lester Elementary and Barnardsville are both on wells, so they will be able to use their water as normal as well. The volume and pressure at our buildings, we may have water, but our buildings take considerable volume and pressure to make them operate normal. We're working closely with our fire marshal to determine which buildings must require or will require a fire watch when we open schools. And hopefully, by the time that occurs, that list of schools will be pretty small. We are seeing pressures rise in our schools right now every day. So we're monitoring that on a daily basis, and we'll keep in contact with our fire marshal and make sure that we are keeping our children safe when we reopen. Next week, our entire department will be focusing on our 7 schools which received the most damage. Following our opening, we will go back to the schools that still have damages on their campus but are not damages that will prevent the schools from opening. So we are aware of the damage and know where it's located on our campuses, and we will be working through that list in a triage manner for the next foreseeable future. At this time, I would like to recognize Ms. Lisa Payne, our Director of Child Nutrition, who's going to go over the child nutrition reopening efforts.
Good morning, Dr. Jackson, members of the board. I stand before you humbled to work for Buncombe County Schools. And we knew that a storm was coming. Dr. Jackson called me and said, "Can we feed people?" We lost phone contact. He read my mind and I read his mind. He drove into the parking lot at the same time I did that Friday. We were only able to feed 650 people that first day. And we were heartbroken to learn that we could not feed everyone in Buncombe County Schools because power was out and roads were out and families could not get to us and we could not get to them. That was probably one of the saddest moments in my career. Today, I stand before you proud to be a member of School Nutrition and to tell you that I am so proud of my school nutrition employees and that they showed up to feed people. I'm going to say it, I say it often, I'm going to be obnoxious about it and shout it loudly that food is the most important school supply. And that without it, none of us could function. So we're going to modify the menu. We are ready. I want to thank Clark and his team and Katie, my associate director, for the support they have shown me in the past few weeks. And because of maintenance and Katie's efforts, we were able to move all of the food out of freezers and coolers that we lost. We hope to get reimbursement for that. But we also had beautiful school nutrition folks and volunteers, thank you volunteers, that went out and cleaned our kitchen. So similar to what Clark said earlier, we closed our school down for the summer, and now we're reopening. Just a 3-week break or 4-week break, whatever that date is. But we are ready. We will modify the menus. I was able to call in that first few days Dr. Lynn Harvey at NCDPI, and what incredible support we received. I called Department of Public Health, Environmental, the Health Department, and they are very much in tune with what we're doing. They've approved our non-potable water menu, which means modified menus. So when I say modified menus, you're going to see a lot for the first 2 weeks of prepackaged, ready-to-eat, thaw-and-serve meals. Not our favorite meal, but a good meal, a safe meal, a meal that children probably will enjoy. And my staff will not be able to use water-driven equipment. We can't turn on combi steamers yet. We can't turn on ice machines. We can't use the dish machine. So for many reasons, those menus will be modified. But most importantly, we'll be feeding children a full meal, probably the first one that they'll receive in many weeks. And I am so grateful to be able to do that. We're going to prepare and assemble packaged meals. We're going to let the administrator make the decision whether it's best for them to come get a grab and go and take it back to the classroom or eat in the cafeteria, what works best for each individual community, being mindful that our students need that. I want to just say, most importantly, that our lunch ladies and men are going to be there ready to serve and welcome those children with an open heart and a smile. And in closing, I want to add that tonight at our football games for families, we will be there. We may not be there in person, but at each concession stand, there'll be applications and the process for DSNAP, because the ability to apply for that starts today and it ends next Thursday, so it is a very short window. So if you can spread the word that families affected that need food assistance, please get the application for DSNAP. Thank you. And I would like to introduce Dr. Jamie Johnson.
Good morning. So I think what we've heard this morning is we have made a lot of plans. We have done a lot of things in preparation to move forward. Speaking of moving forward, I'm going to try to move this forward. Okay. And what I want to share this morning is I think the most important component, the most important element of student and staff support is our willingness and our commitment to listen, to learn, to feel, and to adapt. And so we have spent a lot of time supporting our staff and our students from afar. As Dr. Jackson mentioned earlier, we continue to learn more and more of staff needs and student needs. We have been inundated and are so grateful for the supplies and the resources that have been provided to our community over the last several weeks, and are very proud, as Ms. Payne said, we are very proud that we have organized those in a manner that just yesterday we were able to open our surplus warehouse to some of our staff members who are in need and allow them to go through and gather some of the resources that they need to reopen homes or to be displaced or that sort of thing. So we are continuing to connect those folks with resources and supplies. We do recognize that some of our schools and some of our school communities have greater needs in certain locations, so daily comfort rooms remain available in those targeted locations. And as we prepare to move forward and have staff re-enter our buildings, it is really important to us that we give staff the opportunity to reconnect as a family. First and foremost, we think that is the most important piece of making them feel whole. And some of our staff members or some of our administrators have been able to do that depending on, the availability of water and getting folks into their building. But we, with our student services team, are actually creating a framework that we will share with principals and counselors that kind of have some of those suggestions for reconnecting activities when staff comes in. Our return to work plan actually includes a full day for our staff members to have time just with each other, to process, to hug on, to love, to talk about their experiences, to talk about their fears just with their school community, with their school family. On their second day, our return to work plan includes a second day for staff to continue to reconnect and to actually prepare for those students coming in. We do understand all our teachers and staff want to do is support our kids. Their anxiety, yes, they are bringing their own struggles and their own experiences from the last 3 weeks, but their anxiety comes from wanting to do such a great job for our babies that come through the door. And so we feel like on this second day, we are going to try to equip them with the tools needed to support their students. And sometimes the tools that they need, the only tool that they need is the confidence that they are ready to do so. So we are actually working on pocket cards for teachers. We are going to provide teachers, again, with some reconnect activities that they can do and share with their students. But teachers are really good at facilitating things. They plan, they prepare, they have their lesson plan, they present, and it's great. Teachers are concerned about what if my student comes and says this to me? What if my student comes and says this to me? How am I supposed to answer that? What do I do? And so those pocket cards will give some talking points for some of the questions that we anticipate, but some of the emotions that we can't anticipate. And so we're really, we feel confident that we're going to be able to prepare our teachers and staff with what they need to welcome those students. We will have extra counselors available, and those extra counselors will be available on teachers' second day back. because these counselors are being very gracious and they're coming to support our students and our teachers. But we don't want to ignore the need for our teachers just to be with their family on that first day. So they will be with just their school family on the first day. Our extra counselors will be coming on the second day. They'll be able to help process as needed, but they'll also be able to help prepare and plan for those students coming back. What has been really helpful for us just this past week is we have had listening and learning sessions with all of our school counselors and school social workers and also all of our school administrators. So we have taken all that feedback that we have gathered this week and been very intentional in the reconnect and reopening plans that we are beginning to establish. As important as what we have done this week is our commitment to continue to having those listening and learning sessions after the first day, after the first week, after the first couple of weeks, when we go home for Thanksgiving, when we come back, when we have winter break. All these emotions and needs will continue to evolve. There will be ebbs and flows, and we will listen, we will hear, and we will respond. And I feel like, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of supporting our students, the first and best step needed is to allow our staff to be in a place where they feel confident and whole, ready to welcome our students in. So those structured reconnect activities will be helpful as students come in. We know that our students have had vastly different experiences over the last few weeks. They will come in with varying needs. Some students will come in with really raw emotions, and they need the safety and support of our school buildings, of our school structure, but most importantly, they need the safety and the support and the relationships and the love from their teachers and their classmates. We will have other students who have come in and perhaps have been out of state, visiting loved ones or relatives, or doing things that they don't have time to do during a typical school year. And we're all coming together as a school family. So those reconnect activities will help us ground students and help us ground teachers so that we are able to move forward. We will have counselors available on the first student day. We recognize that students may not be comfortable speaking with people that they don't know, but these counselors and social workers, they're school people. So they are going to be able to observe, to identify, and to share with us how they feel we can best support, even if they're not one-on-one with students or one-on-one with staff. So we're really grateful for that.
Dr. Jackson, those folks come from where? Dr. Jackson.
That's okay.
Sorry,
That's
Dr.
okay.
Johnson.
Those folks are going to come from around the state. Dr. Jackson has great connections and has provided support. We have provided support for other districts at times of need, and at this time it's going to be our turn for them to return the favor. Yes, so we're expecting, our ask is that we have 90 counselors and social workers from around the state, from areas that weren't as impacted, to spend the first 2 days with us, and we would like to have 2 of those people so that they go in pairs, go into each of our 45 schools and be available. And again, the feedback that we gather from that will help inform us moving forward, because we know that there are particular schools and particular school communities who are going to need increased student services support as we move forward. Thank you for the question. We will continue individual and small group support for students. That is something that is in place in all of our schools, prior to the hurricane, but we know that there's going to be an increased need for that. We are committed to ongoing support for our most effective students and most impacted communities. We're not exactly sure what that need is going to be or what that response will look like, but we will do our best to meet that need the more we learn. And again, I think what we need to hear is just that commitment to long-term support. And I think also what is very important is we have tremendous people in each of our buildings. We had Ms. Sherry Lovray from the Crisis Management Institute spend this week with us, and her parting words to our leadership team yesterday and to actually all of the groups that she met with after the first day of being here boots on the ground with tears in her eyes is, I would be proud for my grandkids to be a student in Buncombe County Schools. I am proud to be part of the team that has put so much work and effort into not only making sure that our buildings and our roads are safe, that our students are fed, but that we are meeting all of those needs. when they come to us. So I also want to give a huge shout out and just to our teachers, to our staff members, to our bus drivers, to our cafeteria workers, to our administrators, counselors. All of our people are dedicated to our students. We will move forward and we will adapt. Thank you. Dr. Jackson?
Board members, as we reflect on the presentations from some of our departments last Friday and then again today, the amount of work is staggering. But perhaps even more impactful to me is the heart that's behind all that work. So many times over the course of the last 3 weeks, I've said, you know, we need to, and I turn and whatever it was I was about to say had already been taken care of. The level and depth of conscientious, purposeful, intentional work to prepare and continue to support our students and support our staff is something that we've used the word pride, and pride feels like maybe that's not the right word, but it is a feeling of pride, but there's a feeling of gratitude. Our community depends on our public schools in the best of times. And here in the worst of times, times worse than anyone could have imagined, our public schools have stepped up and continue to step up to that task, and we will continue to do that. And so I am excited to present to you my recommendation for our reopening plan. And so just setting the stage, radical change here. We're really excited that as of today, all 45 of our schools have power. All 45 of our schools at least have non-potable water, and all 45 of our schools have internet connectivity. That work is amazing. We're so grateful for those with the Asheville water system who've worked so hard, all the partners who've come in to help them. I'm grateful for our technology department. There have been times we thought we had internet connectivity at one building only to have the fiber cut as repairs were making to the power system and had to go back and repair it. And so all of those numbers have gone up and down, and we are at 45, 45, 45, and we're certainly very excited about that and very happy to be able to be in this place. As you know, as we've talked about, to make sure that we are opening our schools safely, which is absolutely critical and paramount, that safety is first and foremost, that when our staff members, when our students come into our building, they do so safely. We've met with NCDPI and with DHHS. We actually asked them to create brand new for the first time post-hurricane reopening guidelines when there's not water service available, because as we discussed last week, that was not a thing. If you didn't have water, you shut schools down. But recognizing our students needed to get into school, we started to do work that hadn't been done previously, and our state partners have helped us with that and given us our checklist to make sure that we've done all the things we need to do to be able to open our schools. We've met with our fire marshal multiple times. Mr. Wyatt referenced the fire watch plan. If the water pressure is not sufficient in a building for the fire sprinkler system to be counted on, we can open our schools as long as we have a fire watch, which requires school employees who have no other job than to be on our fire watch. And so we have all of that training. We took care of that this week, and we are prepared for that. Now, we're very hopeful that when we reopen schools, we won't have to have a fire watch in place. Mr. Wyatt's working closely with the fire marshal. They're monitoring the pressure at the fire hydrants, which is the pressure test to determine if you have to have a fire watch, and in our buildings. And so we are prepared for that eventuality. As you've heard me say many times, we're preparing lots of different scenarios because we want to use the one that gets us there fastest and gets us there safely. And so we have that as well. We've also been working with the North Carolina Department of Transportation. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to talk to the U.S. Secretary for the Department of Transportation, Mr. Bouget, and also the North Carolina Secretary for the Department of Transportation, and share with them our appreciation for all the work that's been done and our encouragement to continue to do that work as we work on rerouting our buses, a process, as Mr. Stowe said, that is ongoing and will be for some time. As I visited all of our campuses, I was struck, certainly some of the impact You know you're going to see it before you get there. It hits you in the face, and it's huge in terms of physical impact. Some was a bit surprising to me. I drove towards Glen Arden for the first time after the storm, one of our southernmost schools, thinking, probably going to be okay here. And there were places where I could barely get my car down the road because the trees that had fallen had been cut back, but just wide enough for a car. Well, that's not safe for our buses if the buses could fit through, and there's still roads throughout Buncombe County that are being worked on. And I shared my appreciation with both our U.S. Secretary and our State Secretary of the Department of Transportation for the work they've been doing, and our encouragement to keep up that good work because we've got a lot of work still to do so we can get back to our typical bus routes. And I will in that moment just simply say we really appreciate the patience and grace that we count on our parents extending to us as we work through that. We're going to do our best to have our buses right on time like we're counted on for, like we do, but this is going to be a real tough ask in terms of getting through changing road conditions and making sure we're doing all the things. This is the slide I shared with you last Friday. Last Friday I talked about 32 schools without water, which meant 14,680 students would not have water. As we look at today, I can strike that out because we now have non-potable water in all 45 of our schools. I shared with you that we would have a need of 140,000 gallons of non-potable water on a daily basis, and we talked about bringing in tanks and putting them outside of our building as one of the scenarios we were working on. And I can share with you today we no longer have that need because we have at least non-potable water in all of our schools. I shared with you that we would need 41,000 gallons of potable water at all schools because even those schools that were receiving water at that time were under a boil advisory, and so we can't use that in our kitchens, etc. And so we know today that has changed to 34,000 gallons of potable water because we have 36 schools that still are on non-potable water as of today, and that number changes. That water is still needed, and so putting in a plan for how we take care of that has been some of the work that we've been doing. As we had the opportunity to meet with the Incident Management Command, been with them since this happened, we started talking about opening our schools. We've got to have water for our students and staff to drink as they're present. There are guidelines for that, and so we began talking about we've got to get bottles of water to our schools. In working with Asheville City Schools and with the 7 charter schools, we realized they didn't have the infrastructure to deliver that water. We do. We're here for all children, and so just as we have served our emergency responders from the outset, just as we've done things like Ms. Payne referenced serving food at the shelters, and she's right, we both showed up, and I knew I'd count on her, and she was right there in the parking lot with me, and I appreciate that. But just like that, we said, you know what, we can deliver those bottles of water to Asheville City Schools and to the charter schools so they can open as well, and that plan is in place. We've started that water delivery this week. We'll continue that until we have potable water in all of those schools, and so that work has been underway and continuing. I shared with you that we needed 939 toilets. We don't need those anymore because we have non-potable water. I shared with you that we needed 391 hand washing stations, and the city has confirmed we don't need those as well. And so that slide looks completely different than it did just 7 days ago, and I'm so very grateful for that. So that brings us to where we are in terms of moving forward. So with water, as I referenced earlier, added to this slide is that need for fire watch training. And so we weren't necessarily talking about that yet. We were aware of it a week ago, but we've now completed all that fire watch training as well, and so we're ready to go should we need it. And so in that new scenario, again, we'll be delivering these bottles of water. We've started that now, and we're talking about pallets and pallets and pallets and trucks and trucks and trucks of bottles of water. We'll do what it takes to get our schools open. And so we turn to our plan. Our return to work day will be Wednesday, October 23rd, and Thursday, October 24th. We've heard from many that we need 2 full days. Dr. Johnson did a wonderful job describing how those days need to be spent. We know for our staff to support our students, our staff have to be in a good place. They have to be ready to do that work. And if you're asked for the first time by a child who's experienced something we couldn't have expected, you need to be prepared to answer that question. And so preparing our staff is certainly very important. On these return to work days, it's my recommendation that every single one of our employees be at work. Every single one, with the caveat that if we have an employee who, because of their personal circumstances, can't yet return to work, that they reach out to their principal and supervisor, and we will work with that employee based on their personal circumstances to make sure we're supporting that employee. But all other employees we need at work, including our bus drivers and our transportation safety assistants, our TSAs. We need them because we need them to get on the bus and drive all of those brand new bus routes to ensure that they're safe before we put our students on the bus. In a typical year, as we come back from summer, we don't drive our buses before the first day of school because we've been driving those routes for years. In this case, we're in a different place, and so we do need to make sure that we've driven those routes with our buses before the students are on the bus. We also need all of our child nutrition staff. Ms. Payne referenced all the work that they've been doing to prepare our kitchens, to prepare ourselves to serve meals in a way that is not typical. We have been very proud in Buncombe County Schools that last year and this year we've been able to offer universal breakfast and lunch to all of our students. All of our students receive meals. And so as some of the commissioners expressed surprise, as I've shared in some of our press updates, every day we're serving over 44,000 meals in Buncombe County Schools. And Ms. Payne and her team, who are absolutely incredible, are prepared to continue serving 44,000 meals a day. And so our students will continue to get those 2 meals. And they will look a little different. And as she said, some of the students may really enjoy that, and that's okay too. Using this timeline, October 23rd, October 24th, that is a 5-day notice for our staff. We had promised at least 72 hours. I'd like to make it even sooner, but we still have work to do, as Mr. Wyatt shared, in those 7 schools. We still have work to do across our campus. We have classrooms where we're putting classrooms back together, where the construction is taking place, but we need to get the desks back where they go and all of those things. It does give us an opportunity to reconnect and process. It gives us an opportunity to plan for a reduced instructional time. The teachers came into this school year planning for a year, planning for a grading period, planning for a semester, and all of that has been reduced significantly. You heard Dr. Johnson reference the passion of our teachers. They are passionate about our children reaching their potential, and they're thinking about the loss of instructional time, and so they need the time to think through, what do I need to do on day 1, day 2, day 5, day 10, so we can make sure our students maximize their potential, and again, driving those new bus routes. I'm proposing our students return to school a week from today, October 25th. On October 25th, I'm proposing a 2-hour delay for a few reasons. One, an abbreviated day makes it easier for our students to reconnect in the building, to be supported in the building, to dip their toes into being back at school. Now, some students will go right back to school, and it's not a thing. But for some of our students, and you saw those really large numbers, it's going to be a thing. And for some students who may not have seen the impact because of their personal circumstance, maybe they left town or they just haven't been aware, when they come into their classroom and hear what their classmates have experienced, that's going to be traumatic for them as well. And so that abbreviated day certainly helps our students and our staff. It also gives the opportunity for our staff to gather in the morning to plan for the day, to get themselves ready. If something has popped up at the last minute, we've got some time to make some adjustments if we need to, and so we can move forward. Thinking about the delivery of water, when we have an abbreviated day, we need less water, and so that helps in terms of the logistics of how many semi-trucks of bottles of water we're bringing in. The next 2 bullets, though, I'll put gold stars by, because this is the biggest reason. The first is allowing our buses to drive these new routes once the sun has come up. So our bus drivers are going to drive on routes that we've determined that are safe. But as Mr. Stowe mentioned, our roads are changing. There have been roads that we've driven on post-storm that you couldn't drive on a couple of days later because the road has had a sinkhole or something's happened off the shoulder. And so those routes are changing and will change, and so allowing our buses to drive in lighter conditions is a safety factor. And then I'm very aware, I spent quite a bit of time as a high school principal of our teenage drivers. And our teenage drivers on the road having lighter conditions as they're driving will certainly make it safer. For all other drivers, they've spent 3 weeks not having to worry about buses on the road, and so just like when we come back to school after summer, we'll be communicating with our buses are back on the road. Please slow down. Please be careful going around some of those mountain curves because our bus might be stopped picking up some students, etc. As we move into the following week, Monday, October 28th through November 1st, my recommendation is that that following week continue to be a 2-hour delay for those same reasons, around allowing us, if we find out something on Monday afternoon, we have some time for our staff to plan Monday morning to get ready for that, to allow lighter conditions for driving conditions in roads that are ever changing. And it also gets us through to that next weekend when time changes. And when time changes, it'll be lighter earlier in the day. And so Monday, a week later, November 4th, my proposal is we return to regular school days at that time, or typical school days at that time. Now, all of this stands with, if we need to make a change, we're born to be flexible and adaptable as educators, and we will certainly make a change if it's in the best interest of our students and staff. And so as we consider, or as you consider what I'm proposing, as a real quick overview, I'm proposing our staff return to work. Their return to work days are Wednesday, October 23rd and Thursday, October 24th. Our students return to school a week from today. That's a week's notice for our families, particularly for those who are out of town to come back, for those who may have enrolled somewhere else to withdraw and come back. And we'll look forward to Friday, October 25th on a 2-hour delay. That following week, October 28th through November 1st, a 2-hour delay. I did note that October 31st is currently scheduled as an early dismissal day or early dismissal day. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to have a 2-hour delay and an early dismissal and try to get 2 meals in there. And so what we're saying is that would just be a 2-hour delay as opposed to early dismissal on October 31st, and then a regular schedule on November 4th. And so, Madam Vice Chair, I would make that recommendation to the Board of Education for your consideration of our reopening plan.
Do board members have any questions for our staff? Dr. Johnson? Of course. Okay, Ms. Clements.
Of course I do. And a comment. My little mama used to say, when the going gets tough, the tough gets going. I am amazed at the work that's been done in the last week. Dr. Jackson, I've talked to him numerous times. I always have questions, and he always has the answer, or he gets me the answer. I can't imagine being any more proud of a group of people than the folks that have worked so hard to make this happen. Dr. Jackson, I said this last week, your experience on the coast has certainly paid off for us here in the mountains with this tragedy. So thank you to you and Dr. Reed, Dr. Johnson, our transportation department. Jimmy, you're amazing. You're amazing. I called him and said that a sergeant, highway patrolman friend of mine had folks come in to support his team, and they were talking about Louisiana and their hurricanes, and just gave some ideas. I called Jeremy, and he was in the middle of a meeting, and he said, we got that. Child nutrition, God bless y'all. God bless you for what you've done. Technology I didn't recognize before, but I still don't have internet at home, and you know, my husband's fussing because he can't watch his TV, so I'm on the phone trying to get more hotspot data or whatever. I can't get on my computer. But technology, y'all are amazing. I've been to several donation sites. I'm actually going out to Cane Creek today, Rob, to, where I grew up, and I even have some former employees of mine coming in to help with that. I was shocked when I drove up to Irwin Middle and saw all the teachers, staff members, the principal who hurt his knee, and he's out there hobbling around. Those people could be home, they're getting paid. they chose to come out and be with our kids and do for families. That's big. Last of all, I want to recognize, and I am a little partial to Buncombe County Schools Foundation because I've been a part of that organization for years, and I'm very proud of it. I'm going to recognize my friend and Executive Director, Christy Cheek, who has worked. She's had her husband out working, that she has assisted in getting donations. She's been out there sorting clothes. She has done a little bit of everything. I'm very grateful that after I was a little overly passionate last week about sporting events, that we were able to make that happen. And tonight we have 2 games, one at North Buncombe. So remember this, Reynolds and Inca fans. We will be accepting donations. There's no admission fee. Is that right, Dr.
That's
Jackson?
absolutely right.
And so I would just encourage people to give their donation to Buncombe County Schools Foundation. Remember, 100% of those donations go to the children, to the families, to the staff of Buncombe County Schools, not to anybody's payroll, which is a big deal to me. I and Christy will be at the Robertson Warrior game. And so I hope that folks will take that admission money that they may have used and donate to the foundation. But Christy, my hat's off to you, and we are so blessed to have you in the role that you are. I had questions. I think, SROs, I do want to thank our SROs too. Let me tell you, those folks are phenomenal. They went out and did some wellness checks for us.
Yes, ma'am.
on
They are a
those
big
last-
part of us, our students and staff. Yes, ma'am.
That was huge. They love our kids too, and I love them, and we're blessed to have them, so thank you to the Sheriff's Department. But all the questions I had, you actually answered them, as you always do, Dr. Jackson. There's the one question that I still have on here that parents have asked me about, and I bet you're getting ready to ask about it, the calendar.
Yes, ma'am. So after the board considers the reopening plan,
Okay,
Dr. Reed will present our recommendations
Okay.
for our calendar.
thank you. Well, thank you for allowing me, Ms. Churchill, to
You're
take
quite
time,
welcome.
but
It
I think
almost
it's-
sounded like an Academy Award acceptance speech, but they are all winners, and I appreciate it.
Well, I
so-
just think it's important to recognize.
Absolutely.
What people do.
Yes,
That's,
yes.
because, sometimes the public schools get blamed for a little bit of everything, and I couldn't be more proud.
Yeah. And I learned a long time ago, we're not going to keep that heart of yours from bursting out with pride.
Thank you. Thank you.
Madam Vice Chair, if I may, I'd like
Yes.
to make a motion to approve the plan for reopening as presented.
Okay,
And I'll second that.
okay. Are there any more questions, comments?
I'll speak for that motion briefly. But one, I said it last time, I'm so grateful for all of y'all and all the hard work that y'all put in tirelessly. And I said it last time too, school systems are not machines. School systems are made of people. And I am incredibly grateful that our school system is made up of incredibly compassionate, thoughtful, smart, and respectful people that see the full diversity of our student needs out there and all the needs of those families out there, and that you've proceeded down this path of reopening just a few weeks after this traumatic event in such a very careful way. And so I really want to thank everyone for that approach. In our school system too, we're also a system of neighbors, and I'm incredibly proud about our school system functioning in a way to support our neighbors during this time as a school system. When I think back to going to Fairview Elementary School or Oakley Elementary School to see our schools hosting all of those emergency responders, or Reynolds Middle School who had people, covering up that school, all day long, but providing food, providing water, providing emergency response services, that was our system taking care of our neighbors in the community, right? And that's an incredible thing to see, and it's an incredible model to show our community that we're here for them in so many different ways, not just reading, writing, and arithmetic, but we're here to care for everyone. So I just wanted to acknowledge that as well. And then lastly, you know, you mentioned that 418 students had significant impact and 110 staff members had significant impact. Really, it's 100%, right, of our students. It's 22,000 plus students and 5,000, you know, plus staff that have all had significant impact and all have experienced this trauma in a diverse ways, right? And as we come back into school, as we start to feel safe again and we're kind of out of survival mode, that's when a lot of those emotions and feelings in response to that trauma are going to come out. It's happening in my own house where we're safe now, and we didn't cry like day 2 or 3 because we were in survival mode. We're doing the stuff, we're volunteering, we're helping out, we're trying to take care of our stuff. But 15 days later, tears start to show up because we start reflecting on all the losses that are around us and what that's meant to our family. And so I just expect that as y'all have recognized, and that will just ebb and flow for months and maybe years for a lot of people that have experienced this event in such a devastating way. They've lost family members and friends, and it's going to ripple through our community for a long, long time. So I really just wanted to say thank you to all of our folks that have come together with this plan to approach our reopening in a very compassionate way towards our students and families and teachers as we re-enter our school buildings and try to get back to learning. We're going to be dealing with a lot of this fallout of trauma and emotional response. So just tremendous effort. And I know that y'all have all done this work amidst your own personal trauma and, you know, amidst not having power and electricity yourselves. And, you know, showing up every day when you have to clean up your own yard and clean up, you know, figure out how to take a shower, you know, in places where it could be a community shower system somewhere. It's remarkable to see that you've shown up every day, you know, on into the night all day long to do that, to take care of your community. So it is recognized, and from my community in Fairview, which was in Swannanoa Valley too, Hall Creek and Bell, and the depths of Garin Creek and Flat Creek that were, you know, just absolutely devastated. I'll just, as a bridge to my community back to our school system, from that community, I particularly want to tell you thank you. Because those services, the emergency response that was housed at our schools, that was going out and back in those communities, we were the first, you know, closest logical place to help serve those folks. And we still are. And our schools will continue to serve those communities that were devastated in that way. And so on behalf of the community that I represent, I just want to say thank you to everybody in this room. And that's it.
Okay. Do any other board members have questions or comments? Okay. I would actually, I do, I'm not sure if this is a question, comment, thoughts, but Dr. Jackson, I appreciate the presentation, and again, amazed at what we have accomplished in a week. Getting a little bit of a sneak peek of this, my first thought was the asking for a third day for teacher work day, and that would be that Friday, with students starting on Monday, just to kind of have it be a little bit more seamless. And I've often heard Fridays are crazy anyway for our students, and so I just kept thinking in my head all of the reasons why we should start on Monday. But now, looking at one of your slides, something did jump out to me, and when you're talking about the first day for students returning being Friday, October the 25th, it says to help students reconnect. And so I've been sitting here thinking about that for a while. And in my mind, I find that Friday as a student day is an important day. But I want to make it clear that what I would love to see is that that's a no-pressure day. No pressure on our teachers, staff, to go over test questions or have a lesson plan or sit quietly in your seats, business as usual. I really want to see this as a true reconnection. I want our staff to feel comfortable with that. We say together we rise. I look at it as together we love on that day, and together we have fun. I'm not sure what that looks like, but I just really want to make sure that that's where we focus our first student day.
Ms. Churchill, thank you for elevating that, and that's one thing I can guarantee today, that our teachers and staff will approach everything with love and grace, because they always do. We are working, and part of the 2 days is to work with our teachers around what does Friday look like. As I met with principals, we began to float the what ifs. I mentioned earlier, we works best for our school system. And we had conversations about, well, what day of the week would work best for our school system? And principals universally said Friday for this purpose. For our teachers and our staff, that would be their third work day that week. After not being there, after going through all the trauma, that's going to be a lot. And so having the opportunity to have that first student day and then a weekend to kind of recover and reassess and ensure we're ready for Monday also allows our staff that opportunity to get through the first day. Because even as we approach that first day with our students with grace and love and warmth and care, that's going to be a tough day. Our first day back with our students is going to be tough because it's going to be fraught with emotion. A lot of positive emotion, a lot of hugs, a lot of that. But on those emotional days, we walk home absolutely exhausted. Our students will be exhausted, our staff will be exhausted. And so our principals felt, and I feel, Friday gives us the opportunity to have that day, to have our weekend to reset, and to come back ready for Monday. And so if the board felt like we wanted to do 3 return to work days and then start on Monday, we'll make that happen. The recommendations for Friday, for the reasons you said, and for just the reason of having that weekend to kind of get going after that first student day as well.
And I don't want to amend the motion by any means. I just really want to make sure that I have your promise that
you have my guarantee.
It will not be business as usual, and we will have a fun day. I have no doubt we'll do that. I got to get it out there and say it because it's so important.
I think our staff would mutiny if we said business as usual on the first day back.
Exactly.
Our
yes.
staff, they
yes.
know in their hearts, there's no
yes.
question. That's why I can very assuredly guarantee that that's what that day will be.
Right, but we also all know that they strive for excellence.
They do.
They strive for doing what they're tasked to do, and so I just want to kind of take that pressure off of them and just say that as a vice chair of the board.
One last thing, Dr. Jackson. I want to mention the 2-hour delay because, we've received a lot of feedback about partial days and how difficult it is for parents. And I certainly, as a parent, had those days that were difficult because I worked a job. So I really like the 2-hour delay because we already have 2-hour delay in place. People understand that. We got snow days, so giving parents several days' notice that we'll open up on a 2-hour delay gives them, hopefully gives them the opportunity to make those plans for that 2-hour delay. So I really do like that one too.
Thank you, Ms. Flans. We worked hard on what that schedule
Yes.
might look like, and we felt like, as we looked at, maybe we start a little later and go home a little earlier, we felt that would be harder for parents to
Right.
have
It
both
would
a
be.
late arrival and an early
It
dismissal.
would be.
The 2-hour delay gets at the end of the day, and then we also felt like going ahead and saying how long will that early, or the 2-hour delay last? Saying that was 6 days, 1 week plus the Friday, was important for parents as well, so they can plan ahead. For Friday and the next week, I need to prepare for a 2-hour delay, but after that, unless something changes, we'll be back on a regular schedule. So we also tried to be as friendly to our parents as well for their planning purposes, because we know they need to get back to work and refine typical.
Well, I definitely do think that we've listened to a lot of that feedback, and hopefully parents and families will appreciate that. Thank you.
I have one
Mr.
technical
Elliott.
question I wanted to ask. At the, on TC Robertson on Monday, that we had a tennis tournament, and the facilities were working because we had non-potable water at TC. I think there was a boil water advisory that day, and so the instructions were like, don't wash your hands in the sink with water. And I guess that's my question is, when we return folks into our buildings, if those kind of advisories come out and there's concerns about hand washing, and because we've got potable water taken care of through drinking bottle, through bottled water, but the hand washing water, do we have thoughts around how to handle that?
Yes, sir. Thank you for elevating that question. So there's been questions throughout the week. In the past, we've had boil water advisories, but I don't recall ever having a boil water notice. And when the boil water notice first came out, hand washing was something we weren't supposed to do necessarily. That's been clarified, and so we can wash hands under a boil water notice and a boil water advisory as long as we use soap. And under a boil water notice, they also recommend that we use hand sanitizer after washing our hands with soap. And so we have plenty of hand sanitizer, and so we're prepared for that. So while we're under a boil water notice, we've shared with our principals, we can wash hands. We just need to encourage the use of sanitizer after that. Boil water advisory, we can wash hands. The sanitizer we can use or not use. And then once we're on potable water, of course, we can wash our hands. Now, the one difference is our child nutrition staff cannot use non-potable water to wash their hands and prepare food. And so we've worked with Ms. Payne and her staff to make sure we've got preparations there as well. But that was a conversation throughout the week to understand what can we do, what can we not do. And so we've tried to, every single day since this happened, I've sent an email at the end of the day with frequently asked questions to our principals to make sure we have the latest information, so we can make sure our staff has the latest information. So thank you for elevating that question. Under boil water notice, we can wash our hands using soap, recommendation sanitizer, hand sanitizer after that.
Yeah, thank you. I know there's been a lot of community concern around that issue about, we're reopening safely. What does all this mean for just washing hands of our kiddos? And so
Absolutely.
Thank you for that. And the last thing I will say is, I know over the last few weeks have just been I don't know how many thousands or millions of difficult decisions y'all have had to make. But, we talked last time about having big tanks of water, potable water. We've talked about, 200 restroom trailers, all these different solutions that have come about over the last 2 weeks about how to do this in a safe way. And it's challenging in that environment when everybody's eager to get something done and there's a lot of pressure and anxiety in the room or the community. And it takes a lot of leadership and just calm understanding of situations to make decisions that are logical. And so even though we had some decisions we had some resources, right? You could have pulled the trigger to spend $1.8 million of taxpayer dollars on restroom trailers. You could have pulled the trigger to spend probably another $1.5 million on water tanks, But I just want to say thank you for your intelligence and your working with the community and that sort of central command with Buncombe County Resources and our water folks to just navigate through that in a way patiently, with the insight that you had, and maybe not all of us had it at the same time, but to develop those different strategies, have them in place, but to navigate through this in a way that is smart and the safest outcome, I think took a lot of probably courage on your part and your team's part. So I just want to acknowledge that. That's not easy to do, to bypass, immediate rapid solutions like that. And with this kind of outcome. So I just want to acknowledge that decision-making prowess, maybe. Thank you.
Okay, well, if we don't have any more questions or comments, I do believe that we have a motion and a second. So at this time, I'm going to take a roll call vote regarding the superintendent's recommendation of reopening our schools as presented. Anne Franklin.
Aye.
Rob Elliott.
Aye.
Glenda Weiner.
Aye.
Judy Lewis.
Aye.
Amy Churchill, aye. Peggy Buchanan.
Aye.
Kim Clemens.
Aye.
The motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Reed?
Good morning. At this point in the presentation, we will be taking a look at some academic calendar revisions. So now that you all have approved the reopening plan, I'll be presenting in two parts. The first part, the board's now in a position to respond to the disaster recovery legislation. And then the second part of the presentation, after a vote, will be that we'll talk specifically about revisions to the Buncombe County Schools calendar. I'm going to read to you actually the legislation that we're very grateful that the General Assembly passed for our system, and that is Session Law 2024-51, Disaster Recovery Act of 2024. If the school is located in a public school unit that is located in a county designated before, on, or after the effective date of this act under a major disaster declaration by the President of the United States under the Stafford Act, as a result of Hurricane Helene, in the discretion of its governing body, the public school unit may, 1, make up any number of the instructional days or equivalent hours missed. 2, deem as completed any number of the instructional days or equivalent hours missed up to a total of 20 days. Or 3, implement a combination of both of the above. So what we're asking now is that the board consider a response to this legislation by making a decision on 1, 2, or 3 in the session law that I just read. Specifically, our superintendent's recommendation in accordance with Section 8.1A1 of this Disaster Recovery Act of 2024 is that we choose to mark as complete the 19 student days missed to Hurricane Helene between September 26th and October 24th. And at this time, do you have any questions about that recommendation?
Thank you for that, Lynn. Board members, do you have any questions for Dr. Reed?
I have a question. In marking them as complete, obviously there's been work missed and some foundational pieces that are the beginning of the school year. So how do you implement, or what's the expectation of being able to implement that learning piece if we consider those days complete?
Sure, that's a great question. And some of those details will be presented in the second half of the presentation, but specifically, what we're trying to do and recommending, and this is based on input that we have gathered both from our administrators and from a group of teachers, is that we just compact the first semester and that we try to protect the integrity and general length of the second semester. And so our response really happens in the first semester, and by the time we enter second semester, it feels a little bit more like a normal length and a normal semester. In terms of compacting curriculum, we actually met with an amazing group of folks from NCDPI yesterday and have been working with our curriculum group to come up with some specific guidance on how to compact our curriculum. For our K through 8 schools, it's not as impactful because they have year-long courses for the most part. For our high schools, it is much more impactful, especially in subject areas that have an end-of-course test. And so we've received guidance about how to prioritize that instruction, and we'll be sharing that with teachers early next week. We actually almost have that ready to go. And then I also, when we met with DPI yesterday, asked the question about how does this impact school growth scores? How does this impact proficiency? What does research say about missing school for this length of time? And so the way that we calculate growth scores actually will be adjusted to reflect that we missed instruction for 19 days. And so there really is a formulaic numerical fix in that calculation. And then when reported at the end of the school year, there will be a phrase or something that goes along with that growth score that indicates we missed a certain amount of instruction. So it will be reflected that way. The research that DPI shared with us also is that missing school for this length of a time is much more recoverable in a short amount of time in comparison to, say, what we went through during COVID. The research also says, and I love this, that we must focus our efforts on reconnecting with students, on providing a strong emotional reconnection as a priority. So in no way will we rush teachers into teaching and learning and back to business as usual. It's not the right thing to do, and it's not the best road to recovery.
One just follow-up question there. The adjustments on, honestly, the adjustments on school growth and all this stuff. I think I'm more focused on students, right? And so is that, and students can carry this worry and test trauma, right? Like, oh my gosh, I'm great at stuff. Is that formulaic approach to sort of school level scores, does it also apply to student level scores, so that scores take into account in 19 days of this instruction?
So not necessarily directly to student scores and student data. So student data will be reflected based on the instruction they receive in the classroom from teachers, which will be compacted. There's a way to prioritize standards and teach some standards more to a deeper level that we know will be tested potentially on an end-of-course test. And most of our subjects don't have end-of-course tests. They might have a teacher-made exam. And by the way, we still are recommending that we keep exam exemptions for our students. We'll be giving guidance to teachers on how to approach grading with grace, with multiple opportunities to show evidence of learning. And so I do think that there will be an innate pressure that many of our students will bring back with them. And the most important thing we can do is to set their minds at ease and provide as much opportunity and grace for growth and learning. That's the best kind of response I could give to that question. It will be compacted, and there will be intentional planning that will need to be done. And we'll provide the guidance that teachers need to do that. I do think that's also, one of the reasons we have this 2-hour delay recommendation too, is so our teachers can kind of meet together and ground themselves in any adjustments that they need to make to their curriculum.
Yeah, thank you. So, what I hear you saying is, we're not abandoning, overcoming what we were doing, coming out of learning loss, right? And our recovery of that learning has been really impressive. And I'm sure it will be in this case. We're not abandoning, the topics or the learning that would have happened during these 19 days. It's just gonna, like I said, be a little bit more compressed. And though there may not be a state level formulaic adjustment at the student level that compensates for the 19 days of lost instruction like score. We, at our level, will be graceful and passionate to our students around how those end of grade test scores may impact what happens to them next year, or
Absolutely.
how we talk about it with students, or whatever. That's what I hear you saying.
Th- That's exactly right, and we'll continue to share that guidance and those recommendations.
Madam Vice Chair, if I may, and so just to kind of ground this particular decision that the board is wrestling with, as you know, we have a school calendar law that requires in our school systems, you have 185 instructional days or 1,025 instructional hours. Following this consideration, we'll talk about our school calendar. And so what this Disaster Recovery Act has said is the board could choose either to make up those 19 days or to mark them complete, which kind of checks that box on the 1,025 hours. And so marking, if we decided that, if the board decided to make up those instructional days, what that would look like is either extending our day, so a longer day, having Saturday school. Historically, there have been Saturday schools operated in Buncombe County Schools. I taught at Glen Art on Saturdays when we had a significant snowfall that year. Or extending the school year. Now, we're limited on extending the school year under the current teacher contract. That is a 215-day contract by the state. So there's only 1 week that's left at the end of the year that we can say, here's 5 more days. But if we did that, you're limiting what teachers typically do at the end of the year. And so the board can continue to come back to the school calendar. We know that winter weather might become a thing, and so we may be looking at the school calendar multiple times through years to go. And so in this moment, the question before the board is simply, we go ahead and mark these as complete, go ahead and move forward. And I appreciate all that Dr. Reed said about the hard work that we will do. And to your point, we stand alone and been recognized in just the last couple of months by the state, who sent the deputy state superintendent to talk about the amazing work we're doing academically. And that's a testament to our teachers and faculty. We're going to do that amazing work. And so I have every faith in our teachers and our students and what they'll do academically. My recommendation is to mark these days as complete and not put upon anyone, students or staff right now, thoughts of long school days or Saturdays or extending the year. And then if the board feels as we go forward that we need to do that, we certainly can. And so in just this moment, the question is, mark is complete or direct the staff to figure out a way to get that done.
Are we seeking a motion at this point in time to do that?
Have you completed your presentation?
I have completed this part of my presentation, yes.
So, yes, at this point, we would be a motion to approve the missed school dates from September 26th to October 24th as completed school days as allowed by the Disaster Recovery Act of 2024. Second. And again, a roll call vote. Ann Franklin? Sorry. Any discussion?
If I say one more thing about this, just in support of the motion, is that we do have some remarkable resources in our school system already, right? And they're supported by United Way, our community nights that are happening in our districts. I think that if we can lean on that format, because they are already in place, and that is a place where tutoring can happen. It's remarkable to see, there's food, there's tutoring, there's community engagement, and I really hope to see us be able to kind of lean into some of those resources for our families and students during this time of making up some learning, and really lean into the opportunities that provides our communities and students for tutoring in the evenings. It's not mandatory, but it is there, and it's a good resource. So, thank you.
Madam Chair, did I hear you say you did have a question?
Are we voting on the motion to mark these days complete? Am I clear on that?
Yes, ma'am.
Then I'm in favor.
Okay. Rob Elliott,
Aye.
Glenda Weinert,
Aye.
Judy Lewis. Aye. Amy Churchill. Aye. Peggy Buchanan. Kim Clements.
Aye.
Okay, that motion passes.
Thank you.
Carry on.
At this point, we'll get a little bit more detail about what that looks like in a proposed academic calendar revision. And as Dr. Jackson stated earlier, within that first full week back, October 31st falls there. It was actually an early dismissal day on the calendar previously, but it's hard to do a 2-hour delay and an early dismissal all in the same day. So we'd like to be consistent and change that day to a 2-hour delay. What we are also proposing is that we extend the first semester by 4 days, moving the end of the first semester from January 17th to January 24th. In addition, and this was something that was very important to our high school teachers and also important to the board when you revised this calendar back in April, is that we have a designated teacher workday between semesters for our high school teachers. So what this would do is take the current designated teacher workday from January 21st and simply move it out to January 27th. So there continues to be that designated workday between semesters. And then the last piece that is an adjustment would be to move the March 28th early dismissal day to April 1st. That's not a long move, but it's an important move because April 1st happens to be the end of the third 9 weeks grading period. And that gives teachers just a little bit of extra time, not a full day, but to work on paperwork and get grades finalized for report cards.
Dr. Reed, will you just go over that last one more time?
Sure. So in the current calendar, March 28th is an early dismissal paperwork
Okay.
day.
Okay.
Because we extended, because we changed the start date of second semester, that is no longer the end of the third
Right,
9
okay.
weeks. It actually would fall on April 1st. And so we would just shift that early dismissal day to April 1st.
Okay.
So our
thank you.
teachers have some paperwork time.
Makes sense.
Okay. And the next slide is just kind of an overview and a little summary of the impact of some of these recommendations. One of our major questions has been, how do we approach grading for the first 9 weeks? When Helene hit, we were on day 22, and that was barely halfway through the first grading period. And then we took that chunk of 19 days out, and we'll be re-entering on October 25th. Our end of the first 9 weeks was going to be October 28th, which we've missed over half of. So our recommendation would be to, instead of pass-fail or washing away those first few weeks of assignments, that we actually combine first and second grading periods into one semester. And that's something that DPI is able to do kind of on the back end for us and help us to respect and recognize the work that both teachers and students did before the hurricane hit, and just be able to carry that work forward. And so those grades that are already entered in our system will stay there, and it will just kind of run straight into that second 9 weeks, and there will be a semester 1 grade. And I think I mentioned earlier, we would also like to propose to keep our exam exemptions. That was a really exciting thing for our high school students, our high school teachers and administrators. And one of the things I want to do, and I think Mr. Elliott, you said this earlier, we're approaching everything with compassion. And I just would like to say that these recommendations are grounded in compassion. The last thing we want to do is layer on any additional trauma or stress on students, on teachers, on administrators, and families. So by doing this simple thing of keeping those exam exemptions, I think it just helps people breathe a little bit easier. And boy, if we can do that right now, let's do it. In addition, one of the pieces that is important is that we tried to keep our mid-year graduation on January 25th. A lot of our families have been planning on that date. Our students have asked questions about that date. And so by ending our first semester on January 24th, it's cutting it close, but we can still keep that mid-year graduation date on the 25th. So in summary, if you adopt this calendar as presented, it would take the number of days in the first semester from 87 to 72. That's where the biggest impact is felt on days and hours of instruction. The second semester, as I said earlier, we're trying to protect the integrity of that second semester. It would take it from a 92-day semester down to an 88-day. That's pretty typical, around 88 days for a semester. That would take the total number of days in the school year from 179 to 160. And then the total hours in the school year was previously 1,066. It would take that down to 944 hours in considering those late start days that we're about to put into place. That is all of the information I have. I'm happy to entertain questions.
This is really more of a, well, of course, comment. So just to be clear, we are not changing any of our Thanksgiving break or our Christmas break or any of that.
Okay.
So again, in listening to our families, listening to our teachers and staff and family, I appreciate the fact that we are able to do this without changing those, because I think holidays may be even more special this year.
Absolutely.
We have a lot, so many of us have a lot to be thankful for, and others will certainly need that time.
That's right.
So thank you for doing that.
Absolutely.
Do any other board members have questions?
So one about attendance. I know we rely on our principals a great deal for some discernment around, excusing absences is the right way to phrase it, or waiving absences, but like, I am concerned about, some absenteeism in our schools just related to the magnitude of the trauma we're going through recovery. Are there any additional guidance? Because with a shortened calendar, right? If you're a student who is unfortunately going to have to miss, 10 or 14 days, those 10 or 14 days become more impactful from a learning loss perspective, potentially, right?
Yes.
But I mean, I guess, is there any additional guidance that y'all are going to give our principals on how to handle some of those situations where maybe a student doesn't have a doctor's note, but they're wrestling with something else?
Absolutely. Every situation will be handled on a case-by-case basis. Our counselors and social workers are well-trained to work directly with families, and our principals, certainly administrators and teachers, are as well. We've always had attendance, we've always had options with instruction with students who struggle with attendance, and we'll continue to tap into those options. It's really going to be hard to know until our students do come back on Friday of next week what those needs will be exactly, but that's one of our priorities, is to assess that type of need, and again, to show grace and flexibility in our decisions with every single student and family.
Well, and one last question about, I was just curious if you knew about, we talked about end of grade testing and this full year to kind of make up some learning and stuff, but like one area where that may not be an option is around AP exams.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just curious, are there, just like we've gotten this, grace, I guess, in response from the General Assembly on counting these 19 days as present, at the AP level of coursework, is there anything, I don't know, is there any support there from like, I don't know if it's the AP system, I don't know how that works, but like, I feel that pressure from some of those students that are maybe seniors or whatever that are, really striving for AP credit, and this 19 days of lost time really could impact their performance on an AP exam. Is there anything that we have in place?
Sure. We talked about that in our high school principal meeting just last week, and that is a legitimate concern. Most of our AP classes are year-long courses. So in the same way that our K through 8 schools, it kind of sets them at ease a little bit, they've got a little bit longer to kind of assess where students' understanding is and be really intentional about their instruction throughout the course of the year. Our fall semester AP classes are the ones probably that give us a little bit most pause.
Yeah, that's.
And so what we talked about as a group of high school administrators is that we would get together and make a plan in order to address any learning that they felt like they were not able to do at a depth that they needed to. And so that could look like after-school sessions,
Okay.
exam preparation, but there will be very intentional effort put into that
Thank you.
particular question.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
Any other questions? All right, well, so. Did we? I'd like to make a motion
Thank
that we
you.
accept the calendar as presented.
Great. I'll second.
All right, and now we will do a roll call vote. Anne Franklin,
Aye.
Rob Elliott,
Aye.
Glenda Weiner,
Aye.
Judy Lewis,
Aye.
Amy Churchill, aye. Peggy Buchanan, aye. Kim Clemens,
Aye.
aye. All right, the motion passes. So, we come to a part now where I would be listing off the announcements and future meetings, and I promise y'all, I'm also watching the clock. We'll get there. I just want a point of privilege for right now. I just want to take this time to publicly applaud all of our family members of Buncombe County Schools. And that includes staff, students, families, community partners. If you've had any hand in getting us to where we are today, thank you. And I want to give the opportunity to applaud these people, because without you, this would not have been possible. And y'all are the reason that we are able to open when we're opening. And y'all know I say it a lot, but we do love you. And go BCS. So getting back to the end of business, have announcements. The next Board of Education regular meeting is November the 14th, 2024. Work session updates and closed session beginning at 4 p.m. in the executive conference room, and the open session beginning at 5:30 in the Minitorium at 175 Bingham Road, Asheville, North Carolina, 28806. May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
And once again, a roll call vote. Anne Franklin,
Aye.
Rob Elliott,
Aye.
Glenda Weiner,
Aye.
Judy Lewis,
Aye.
Amy Churchill, aye. Peggy Buchanan,
Aye.
Kim Clemens.
Aye.
Okay, we are adjourned.